In one history, a boy from a desert becomes a weapon and the galaxy forgets how to breathe. But what if he didn't? What if Anakin Skywalker became a Mandalorian? In this version of the story, that's exactly what happens. And nothing turns out the same. Let's begin. Sundari is quiet at dawn. White avenues curve under a blue sky that isn't the sky at all. The city hums like a kept secret. Inside a high balcony villa, a child named Anakin Skywalker stares out at spires that catch the sun and thinks they look like blades standing on tiptoe. His parents, Theej and Shmi, come from a house that remembers war without worshipping it. Beskar stands on ceremonial racks, not because they've forgotten how to use it, but because they choose when to. Theej teaches a path he calls Kiado. Move with the strike, not against it. Turn force into balance. Protect before you punish. Shmi keeps the old tools cleaned and ready, because hope is not a plan. Look, Theej says, pointing across the curve of the city to the palace where Satine Kryze rules with a steady hand. This is our duty, not a code carved in stone. Our people, times change, so we change with them. Anakin nods. He's 13 when his father opens a case and sets down a suit that gleams like starlight under cloth. A helmet with plates that could shrug off an angry cannon, bracers wired for modular toys, a chest piece that will not let a shot find the heart on the first try. Not parade armor, not full war, something in between. A promise, if fate demands it, you will live. The boy trains, rangefinder down, grapple out, a blaster that never wobbles. Kiado drills until muscle becomes memory. In halls funded by Satine, he studies history instead of battle plans and still learns how battles end. He listens to his father repeat one line until it roots. There is nothing noble in being superior to others. Only in being superior to your former self, it fits him. Then the rumor comes. Concordia's governor smiles too easily when he says Satine's title. Minds that should be dead aren't. Men in blue armor practice in the dark. Theej knows what it means before the reports get stamped. House Skywalker has always guarded the state without being told. He grimly checks the charge on his pack. Anakin watches him tighten a strap, then tightens his own. They go together. Concordia smells like old oil and colder stone. Anakin moves through a maintenance gallery using shadows and noise. A clatter in the west corridor pulls a squad away. He slides along a conveyor, climbs a ladder, and finds crates stacked like teeth. Inside, power cells, rocket fuel, rifles, no pretense. An army is waiting. Outside, his father is a hard line against the open air. Jetpacks spark, a cable hisses. A blue figure with a cape steps into view holding something that turns sunlight into midnight. The darksaber breathes like it knows the names of the dead. "Don't!" Anakin yells, and the voice that answers is calm. Too late. A single stroke. Theej falls. Hands slam the boy into dirt. A knee drives his shoulder. The black blade bites his helmet, carves a window around one eye, and fills his skull with white pain. Then a shockwave rolls through the platform. The charges Anakin set earlier kiss a stack of jetpacks, and fire makes cowards out of the brave. He rips free, throws himself into a ship, and leaves a trail of breath and tears all the way home. Sundari's medics give him a long nap and a short list of rules. Shmi never leaves his side. Satine stands at the foot of the bed and says nothing because there isn't a word for this. When he wakes, the story drops out of him in unfinished lines. Deathwatch, Concordia, a blade that drank the light. Satine must leave to keep Mandalore off the Republic's leash. Shmi gives her blessing and then looks at her son. "If you go back, you go for Mandalore," she tells him, "not for blood." He lowers the rangefinder to hide his eyes and nods. They take a plane shuttle. No heraldry, no speeches. Pre Vizsla expects a prime minister. He gets a boy wearing a crest and a scar flaring angry pink through a new hole in a helmet. "I challenge you," Anakin says, and the words change the room. No one counts. No one blesses. The cape flares. The black blade rises. The first exchange is ugly. Vizsla's cable wraps ankles and drops Anakin flat. A blow from the flat of the blade rings his skull and throws stars into the visor. He breathes once, tastes blood, and remembers Kiado. Receive. Redirect. Return. He rolls inside the next slash, catches the wrist, and hammers a gauntlet into the seam at the ribs. A shock strip crackles. The smell of cooked fabric fills the hall. Vizsla snarls through teeth that can't quite find each other. Fire gouts from his wrist. Anakin ducks through the flame, snaps off 4 shots, and a blue helmet skids across stone like a kicked bowl. The darksaber clatters. It feels heavy when Anakin lifts it, like the past, like responsibility. Vizsla reaches for a backup that isn't there. Anakin finishes it with a single clean cut. No speech, just an end. He turns the black edge toward the Watchers. "Kneel or leave," he says. "No more purges. No more secret wars. Choose." Knees hit stone. Bo-Katan hesitates, then lowers her head like it costs her a tooth. Shmi lets go of a breath she carried since the ramp. The message to Sundari is short. Concordia is secure. Death Watch is broken. The planet stands on its own feet. Satine returns without a guard of trumpets. In her chamber, she looks at the saber, then at the boy who holds it. "It's yours," she says. "I don't rule by myths. I rule by consent." He sets the blade on a table like a coiled animal, and something inside him unlocks. He doesn't want a throne. He wants a future. Anakin builds a cage for the worst of Death Watch and a purpose for the rest. The elder zealots see cells. The younger ones see work they can live with. They become a garrison on Concordia under watch, a force that drills to exhaustion and eats with farmers. Bo-Katan stays, bitter as black calf and twice as strong, and finds that routine dulls bitterness better than speeches. At night, Anakin learns the darksaber. At first, each swing drags like a weight on a chain. In the library, Satine pulls a dusty text and points to a line about becoming one with the blade. Shmi corrects his stance, taps a knee, adjusts a shoulder. The heaviness softens. The black edge stops fighting him. It starts listening. A guard named Zaid Kren watches from a balcony and then drops beside him during a break. "You felt the strike before it landed," he says. "You always do." Anakin wipes sweat from his brow. He does not answer. Zaid has been around long enough to hear the silence. He arranges training without fanfare: sword, blaster, jetpack in confined spaces, gauntlet trickery, non-standard angles. He calls in 3 royal guards who owe him favors and makes them spar with a boy who anticipates them a heartbeat before they move. After months, the boy starts smiling during work. The smile looks like a pressure valve opening. The war off-world expands. The Republic and the Separatists grind each other down at the edges of maps. Mandalore stays neutral by being meticulous. Satine files treaties the Senate reads like a routine. The name Camino appears on shipping ledgers and then disappears again. No one asks. Everyone knows. A name Anakin can't ignore surfaces on a Concordian manifest: Count Dooku. The line between sponsor and saboteur snaps into focus. Vizsla had help far above his rank. There are things Satine will never order and things House Skywalker will never ignore. Anakin takes back an old battleship from a locked hangar. Keldabe hull, ugly, perfect. The crew is a braid of royal guards and Mandalorians who learned the hard way that war without purpose is just another name for noise. Shmi meets him at the ramp with a clasp on the forearm. "For Mandalore," he says. She touches the helmet. "For the living," she answers. Sereno's blockade wakes up angry. The Keldabe eats more than it should and answers with a mouth full of thunder. Fighters draw lines across starlight. When the smoke blooms, Anakin dives with the strike team and hits dirt running. Droids advance like a metronome. Lightning lifts 5 warriors and throws them down smoking. Count Dooku walks as if the ground belongs to him, cape sweeping, saber precise. A line of guards folds. Anakin's chest cracks under a shove you cannot see. He tastes copper and keeps going. The clash is short and brutal. No elegant flourishes, no speeches. A thrust that should never land slides through a gap a cape reveals. The darksaber hisses as it opens a wound in a history that thought itself safe. Dooku drops on one knee, shocked to discover the world has kept moving without him, and the black blade ends a war's spine. The machine staggers, Grievous roars, and then disappears under a tide on some later field. The CIS leaves scorch marks where it used to stand. The Republic drafts new speeches to hide old mistakes. Anakin returns without parades. He exiles Death Watch veterans who refuse any banner but their own. The ones who pledge to the world, not a man, keep their kits and sign on to guard the border of a planet they almost broke. Concordia sees patrols that wave to miners on their way to shift. Satine calls him to the palace, and in private thanks him for turning a blade into a boundary. Then a man in a hood steps into that same room, and the guards stiffen until Satine smiles with her eyes instead of her mouth. "Obi-Wan," she says, and time changes shape. He wears dust and is quiet. When he takes off the hood, the beard is there, and the lines around his eyes are heavier than they should be. Satine embraces him and jokes about terms of surrender. He dissolves into the joke like a man taking a first drink of water in days. In public, he is Ben. In private, he has the same stubborn heart. Anakin meets him that afternoon in a training hall where the darksaber hangs on a stand like a sleeping animal. They bow. Blue meets black. Obi-Wan's patience against Anakin's pressure. Air hums. Gauntlet blade flicks. A jet tap and a low jump. A stalemate that teaches more than a victory. You feel everything, Obi-Wan says between exchanges. Let it pass through. Don't let it steer, Anakin tries. It is harder than cutting a man in half. Months later, Duchess Satine's rule is tested by a name that crawls out of old scars. Maul. He stitches a collective of criminals into something that believes itself an army. Sundari wakes one morning to banners she did not vote for and guard posts that weren't there yesterday. Satine is taken because Maul wants a specific man to come to a specific room. He gets two. The palace is all echo and blue light. Maul stands like a nightmare that learned to draw breath. Savage looms, a mountain with a red horizon for a face. Satine is brought in, spine straight, fear present and carefully shelved. Kenobi, Maul says with a smile that isn't. At last. Obi-Wan does not look at him. He looks at Satine. Something gentle passes between them, old and alive. Then he and Anakin move. Blaster fire brackets Maul and forces his saber up before his speech can land. An EMP sphere rolls and pops. The metal from Dathomir glitches. The legs stop trusting the brain. Savage bellows and charges. Anakin's flamethrower breathes once. The big Zabrak staggers and loses timing. Blue and black cut a red X the body can't step away from. The hall is suddenly full of people who don't know what to do with their hands. Bo-Katan steps out of the shadows and barks orders. Maul's loyalists drop weapons like they're hot. Satine stands on her own feet and looks at the two men who turned a trap into a funeral. The blade, Obi-Wan says later, eyeing the darksaber on its hook. It's not a crown, Anakin answers. It's a job. Mandalore breathes. Anakin builds a battalion with a reputation that spreads faster than its name. The holofeeds label it the Iron Flame because watching it move is like watching fire remember where to go. Jetpacks stitch the sky. Flamers clear nests no one else can reach. Kiado turns a charge into a pivot and leaves enemies swinging at air. Where others grind, they finish. Clones end up under his command in ones and twos, and then by the company. They like that he looks them in the eye and calls them by the names they chose. When he says hold, they hold. When he says home, they picture something. Palpatine notices. Of course he does. He invites the young leader to offices with windows that frame sunsets. He praises with a surgeon's touch. The Republic needs warriors, not monks, he says. You were born to protect, not hesitate. Anakin listens. He mistrusts the scent behind the compliments, but not the truth buried in them. He thinks about it in quiet moments. Helmet on the table, hands around a cup of tea Shmi insists is medicine. On a diplomatic visit, Padme Amidala walks Sundari's market without a squad and buys bread like a neighbor. A day later, she and Anakin share a view from a balcony and a secret that would have gotten him exiled in a different life. Here, it earns him a smile from a duchess who knew love could be a traitor if you let it, and a strength if you didn't. Love makes you careful, Shmi says when she meets the senator. Let it make you brave too. The war keeps chewing. The Senate keeps talking. The Chancellor keeps setting the table for a dinner no one should eat. Then one night, the mask slips. In an office that smells like furniture polish, a good man's voice says a bad name. Sidious. Anakin does a Mandalorian thing. He tells the truth to everyone who needs to hear it. Obi-Wan, Satine, the Council. No bargaining, no secrets, no solo gambits that turn friends into collateral. The arrest becomes a brawl in marble and light. Lightning claws. Red cuts blue. Masters fall in ugly, human ways. The Senate, built for voices, hears bodies. Obi-Wan's guard buckles and then regains its shape. A blade, named for the law, swings toward the heart of a lie. Anakin arrives and chooses. He does not kneel. He aims for the life downriver from this fight, for the children who will or will not wake to sirens, for a planet under a dome that deserves quiet mornings. Black meets red. Sidious smiles like a man who already won and finds out he hasn't. Anakin drives through and ends a plan that spanned decades with a single breath. Silence lands like snow. The Clone Wars stutter, sag, and stop. Fleets drift. Orders die unspoken in throats. In another history, stormtroopers would march into ash and call it peace. In this one, they go home and learn what their own names sound like when they aren't shouted. That's where we'll pause. The galaxy stands in a ringing quiet. The Senate wakes to a dawn without the voice that whispered in its walls. The Jedi Council stares at itself and sees too many riddles and not enough bridges. In that room-size pause, people look for a hand that isn't shaking. They find two. Padme Amidala takes the Chancellor's office with a nod to the crowd and a list of words that are not threats. Trials, not purges. Disarmament with timelines that don't get soldiers killed because a calendar demanded it. Food shipments to worlds that have never seen a Senate seal in anything but bad news. A vow to listen. It sounds like water in a desert. Anakin Skywalker goes home. He returns the darksaber to its hook in a public hall and posts a small plaque beside it. This is not a crown. It is a responsibility. Pick it up only if you know why. He doesn't ask for titles. He accepts work. Satine asks him to help knit torn clans into something that can walk without falling. Bo-Katan takes command of Concordia's formal defense force and turns daily drills into a religion that doesn't need a god. Old Death Watch diehards pack and leave. The ones who stay learn to wave at miners at shift change and mean it. The clones are given options no one planned for. Some return to soil and sun on worlds they defended. Some take oaths to protect Mandalore's borders and discover that a home can be chosen. Some accept a stipend and a small apartment with a window that faces morning and figure out what to do with quiet. In a training hall that smells like oil and young sweat, Anakin starts a new order that does not axiom itself into a corner. They call it the Order of the Gray Flame, not because it is dull, but because it refuses easy absolutes. Strength serves compassion. Love is not a backdoor for weakness. It is the reason to stand in front of the door and block the shot. Foundlings stretch in armor that fits them because a smith measured them like they were worth measuring. Jedi who can't find their chairs in a shattered temple arrive with travel packs and haunted eyes. Ahsoka shows up first and grins when she sees jetpacks lined up beside practice pikes. Quinlan Vos arrives second with a joke and 3 maps of places that need help. A boy named Cal listens more than he talks. He learns to land his pack without breaking his ankles and to set a blade low for spar until both moves make sense at the same time. They learn Kiado the way Theej taught it: receive, redirect, return. They spar with lightsaber pikes because reach is a virtue. They keep vibroblades in gauntlets because surprises win more than speeches. They meditate in the morning, then run scenarios that involve screaming civilians and doors that don't open. They talk about fear like it's weather. You carry on through the weather. Obi-Wan visits with a beard, then without, then again, because Satine prefers it, and the guard likes to tease him. He sits with the young and shows them a basic guard 12 ways until they see the difference between patience and waiting. He and Satine argue policy, then hold hands in a quiet corridor because they paid for this future and refuse to spend it all on work. Sundari changes. Statues that used to glare are removed. In their place, trees go up in soil that has to be brought in by truck and blessed by old men who pretend not to believe in blessings. Children run under branches. The city, designed to survive, begins to feel like a place meant to be lived in. The Senate writes letters to Mandalore. Some of them are questions. Some are worries with stamps. "Are you building an army?" one asks. Anakin answers precisely. "Yes, we rescue, we escort, we evacuate. We don't conquer." Admirals Radis and Akbar visit for an afternoon that turns into a weekend. They eat street food and watch a Kiado exhibition and leave with new protocols for extraction under fire. Bail Organa sends crates with parts no one will admit he paid for. Chandrila holds a memorial for civilians lost between flags. And an embassy staffer from Mandalore lays a sprig of green at the edge of the stage without a speech. Not everyone improves. Crime finds new hosts. A cartel out of the unknown regions begins cutting border worlds out of their own supply chains. The Gray Flame answers with quiet lightning. Ahsoka leads an insertion through a service spine while Quinlan reroutes security loops with a grin. Anakin and a squad drop through a skylight that used to be pretty and now looks like a map of consequences. The darksaber never leaves its stand. The point is not to inspire terror. The point is to end it. They leave with hostages alive. The cartel tries again in 3 months and finds a relief convoy in their way, and a senator from Naboo on their screens telling them they will be paid full freight for legal cargo and paid nothing for fear. On Concordia, a small group of purists tries to turn a memorial into a rally. Bo-Katan lets them speak under permit and then asks 3 questions they can't answer about feeding children. By morning, their stencils are painted over with crude flowers by foundlings who got up early because they wanted to. Anakin remembers to visit the garden, where Shmi sits with a small pot of tea and a bigger pot of patience. Her hair has gone white at the edges. Her smile hasn't. Sometimes they don't talk. He watches a class practice roll and guard. She watches him not understand that he is happy, and then catches himself understanding it. "You look like your father when you argue with the air," she says once. He laughs. It isn't a sound he used to like. It fits him now. The Republic's demobilization is messy, then less messy. Worlds that used to be supply nodes become towns again. The Senate stumbles, but mostly in the direction it says it aims. Chancellor Amidala loses votes, wins better ones, and moves a long list forward because she refuses to accept that later means never. When she visits Mandalore, She walks into the market without a cordon. Vendors argue over who gets to give her free bread. She pays anyway. Anakin keeps fighting, but he changes how. There are fewer duels, more decisions. He sits with Bo-Katan over a slate of budgets and learns that munitions cost less than schools until a war comes, and then cost more than anything. He sits with Satine over a map of refugee lanes and learns to be stubborn without being cruel. There are frictions. A governor on the Rim decides to tax Mandalorian convoys at double the rate because he thinks neutral means weak. The Grey Flame escorts 12 shipments in a row and refuses to be baited. Padme calls the governor to a committee and asks for receipts. He resigns a week later because paperwork is its own kind of blade when it is sharpened. There are threats that aim higher. An old imperial plan that never got to wear its name, the bones of something that would have been the Empire, tries to rise in the shadows of core bureaucracy. It finds fewer buyers than it hoped. People remember 4 years of war too clearly, and the sight of the Senate lit by lightning too vividly. In a closed meeting, Bail says softly, "In another life, we'd be hiding." Padme replies, "In this one, we legislate." Maul's remnants do not vanish like smoke. Some try to cohere around a title they don't deserve. They die in alleys or stop being brave the minute a jet boots up in their street. Others try commerce. They discover Mandalore's commerce bureau is more frightening than its warriors. Ahsoka testifies against one boss in a court that smells like old wood and new hope. And the jury reaches a verdict in an hour. The boss goes away. His replacement opens a legal shipping company and finds out he likes sleeping. The Grey Flame grows carefully because growth can crush things if you don't watch. There is a chapter on Alderaan where foundlings teach guards Kiado in a park. There is a small hall on Corellia where pikes hang beside family photos. There is a hut on a backworld with 2 sabers mounted on the wall, one blue, one white, and a girl who always wanted to fly, finally teaching others how. Anakin travels less than he used to. When he does leave, he leaves someone better in charge. Ahsoka runs a month with less noise and more results. Bo-Katan runs a month with fewer smiles and twice the drills. Obi-Wan still runs a class on deflection angles like it's an art and not a trick. And half the room leaves thinking about philosophy when they only meant to learn how to not get shot. He and Obi-Wan walk the Rim at dusk sometimes. The dome turns stars into something you can touch. Did we do enough? Obi-Wan asks on a night that feels like a held note. No, Anakin says, but we're doing it. He visits the memorial where names scroll in a calm light. Theej Skywalker, who taught a boy to redirect a blow instead of answering it with more heat. Royal guards who died on Sereno. Clones who bought seconds with their lives and did not waste them. Civilians whose only weapon was being in the wrong place at the wrong time and refusing to vanish from the wall. He sets 2 fingers to his father's name. The ache is cleaner. It has edges that don't cut anymore. A call comes on a quiet morning with tea, an uncharted threat moving along the far edge of known space. Not a war, yet not a cry for salvation either. A request for help, couched in professional calm. "We'll send a detachment," Anakin tells the image. "We'll advise. We'll help you hold your line." "Thank you," the voice says, and means it. It feels like a very small empire failing to be born. Years run. Armor gets repainted. The Darksaber leaves its stand fewer times each year. Anakin uses it when a symbol will end a fight faster than a speech, then puts it away before it starts being the kind of crutch that turns into a crown. Satine naps in her office with briefing notes on her chest, and wakes ready to argue with anyone who confuses quiet with complacency. Bo-Katan catches herself laughing at a drill and pretends to cough. Padme wins a 3rd term she didn't want and uses it to build boring things that keep people alive. Roads, clinics, courts with judges who don't accept donations from anyone with a fleet. Bail retires early and then forgets he retired and writes bills anyway because the habit is honest. Obi-Wan teaches a child how to step forward into an incoming strike without giving ground. Ahsoka tells a teenager to trust her second thought, not her first. Quinlan sends a message from a border world with a picture of a market and the words, "They argued about fruit prices for an hour." Perfect. Shmi places small stones around the base of a young tree in the temple garden. It will grow through the dome's morning light and make shade for a class that hasn't been born. She asks the Force to make it strong and smiles at herself for asking. And Anakin. He sleeps some nights without waking. He dreams about long corridors and a machine's breath less often. If the dream comes, he walks through it. He opens a door with his own hand. He steps out into a hall lit by a sun that is not a reactor and hears foundlings arguing about jetpack fuel mixtures in a way that sounds like hope pretending to be bickering. Sometimes he takes the darksaber down and stands in the hall after closing, the blade humming low, black light painting the stone. He thinks about what it could have been, a leash, a hunger, a lie, and what it became in his hand. A boundary, a promise kept. He turns it off. He puts it back. He reads the plaque again to make sure it still says what it should. This is not a crown. It is a responsibility. Pick it up only if you know why. What if Anakin Skywalker became a Mandalorian? In this timeline, he was a blade that chose to be a shield. His path burned bright and ended at the edge of a promise held by the family he stood beside. After that, the galaxy learned to speak again. Not in shouts, in conversations, in votes, in lessons, in the quiet work of repair. If you enjoyed this alternate path, hit like, subscribe for more Star Wars stories, and may the Force be with you.